joke with her. She'd say, Ellen, go to the car and bring it in. They'd come in, and I go, anything from me? She always bought me one thing. But everything else, Sammy, 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 Sammy. So I continued. As they, you know, Nadia was 2 months older when my wife died.
Oh, really?
So Nadia doesn't remember.
Yeah.
But Sammy was at the house. My wife died from ALS.
Yeah, I remember you telling me
And
that. Yeah.
I wouldn't wish it on my worst enemy.
Yeah, it's a very
So what happened was, Sammy was with me all day. I have a great daughter and son-in-law. My son-in-law was here last night with me. They worked a half a day. My son-in-law in the morning, my daughter would come early in the afternoon, and they would be with me. So Sammy, I had lunch, and Shabbat Shalom. I'm not going to argue. That's okay. Shabbat Shalom. Oh, what's the subject tomorrow in class?
You want to know everything.
Yes. You're not going to tell me?
No surprises, right?
Oh, okay.
No, not good.
So what happened is I put in my wife's hand Hershey miniature chocolates. So after Sammy would come to me and says, go talk to Sal. And Sal would give him some chocolate. He would say, he would do whatever about it, give her a kiss. And he remembers Sal. He knows he got a lot of gifts from Sal.
And he's the one who's going to be about
Yeah. I only have one child. That's why we came from Israel. Not I would have stayed there. I found out 4 years afterwards was another reason. It wasn't financial or anything. I served with the Golani troops. That's the frontline troops at that time, and they still are. And I was in the 73 war, the war against Arafat in Lebanon. Been in the Red Sea, crossing to Egypt.
72.
West Bank, Gaza.
So what's,
My wife.
yeah. Shabbat Shalom. Yes. How are you? I'm good. How are you guys? Frank? Yeah. Yeah. Just cool.
Nothing happened to me. He needed directions, and the doctor had to use the facilities. And then half an hour later, my wife's outside with the dog again. I pop up. And I said, hey, good looking, guess who's home? She cried.
Thank you. I love that.
But she worried about it. Hi. All the women hug. Where's my
She's
hug?
so sweet. That's
Where's
why.
my hug?
I'm sorry, just.
Oh, I'll ask Herb to give me a hug.
That's right.
He did in front of my son-in-law
That's
yesterday.
right. Yeah.
But she really worried about it. Because
It's on the
There you go.
where's my
That's
hug?
what he needs a hug.
You gonna give me a hug today?
No.
You gave me a hug yesterday. He had cold hands. No, not with your hands. See? Oh my God, you are cold. How do you stay with him so many years?
She had no choice.
My pleasure. I like Joe.
Did you go
I
talk
have
to
nothing
her?
but good memories.
You go talk to her?
My wife, we blended together, and we grew together, just like you and your husband.
You know, stop these being
And
Friday
my
night
daughter
because
lives 3 minutes
they'll
from me.
come on Saturday.
Okay.
It's my hope that
Good job. Rabbi, till when we have big groups and things like this, we
And they were
alternate
small, but
Friday
just
night
6
and then
years
next week Saturday morning.
Mine didn't have as many as my grandchildren. I like a lot of unstructured time. Yeah, I think it's healthy for me.
Well, I learned.
But my grandchildren.
I learned one
We
thing.
have 4 weeks, 4 weeks in a row. To meet for some Saturday morning.
It has to be blessed.
Conversation.
He wasn't a good father.
good morning.
I stayed on
And that's a good way to be a friend.
My first one indicated future.
Sorry.
Mine's on here.
Shabbat Shalom, everybody.
Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat Shalom. We are a cozy group this morning. We will.
You never know.
It's like, glad that you're here. Glad we were just talking. Glad to be in the balmy warm up, and to have some sun with us as well, and to spend Shabbat together. We've talked about this before. We need to switch out your seat and mine. If at some point you don't see me, it's because the neck of her guitar has taken me out. But you'll pray for me, all right? This is our place. So we start page 192, page 192 with the singing of Ma Tovu.
Ma tovu, ma tovu, ohalecha Yaakov, mishkenatecha Yisrael, ma tovu, ohalecha Yaakov, mishkenatecha Israel, vani berach hasecha, ahavo beitecha, eshtavel chol kodshecha, beiratecha, ma tovu, ma tovu, ohalecha Yaakov, mishkenatecha Yisrael, Adonai ahavti, me'an beitecha, u'mekol mishkan kevodecha, mishkan kevodecha, vani eshtachaveh, ve'echra lifnei Adonai, osi.
Ma Tovu, Ma
Tovu,
ohalecha Yaakov,
mishkenatecha Yisrael,
Ma Tovu,
ma tovu,
ohalecha Yaakov,
mishkenatecha
Israel.
vani tefilati lecha, Adonai et ratzon, Elohim berov chasdecha,
Berov
chasdecha, aneni be'emet ishecha,
Ma Tovu,
ma tovu, ohalecha Yaakov, mishkenatecha Yisrael,
Ma Tovu,
ma tovu, ohalecha Yaakov, mishkenatecha Yisrael, mishkenatecha Yisrael.
we give thanks for being together. We give thanks for all the systems that allowed this to take place, most especially the systems of our own bodies and how they work and how they serve us as we say, Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam asher yatzar et ha'adam b'chokhmah, u'varavo nikavim nikavim, chalulim chalulim. Praise to you, Adonai, our God, sovereign of the universe, who formed the human body with skill, creating the body's many pathways and openings. It's well known before your throne of glory that if one of them be wrongly opened or closed, it would be impossible to endure and stand before you. Blessed are you, Adonai, who heals all flesh, working wondrously. Baruch atah Adonai, rofeh chol basar, mafli la'asot. Elohai neshama shenatata bi tehorahi. My God, the soul you have given me is pure. You created it, you shaped it, you breathed it into me, and you protect it within me. For as long as my soul is within me, I offer thanks to you, Adonai, my God and God of my ancestors, source of all creation, sovereign of all gods, of all souls. Praised are you, Adonai, in whose hand is every living soul and the breath of humankind. Baruch atah Adonai, asher biyado nefesh kol chai, veruach kol basar ish.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher natan l'sakvi vino l'chafhin ben yom uben layla.
Amen. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, pokeach ivrim.
Amen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, matir asurim.
Amen. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, zokef gefufim.
Amen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, rokach haaretz hamayim.
Amen. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, hamechin mitzadei kaver.
Amen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, al bisharumi.
Amen. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, hanoten la'ayef koach.
Amen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, hama'avir shana me'inayot l'mami afapai.
Amen. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, sha'asani b'tzelem Elohim.
Amen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, she'asani bat chorim.
Amen. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, sha'asani Yisrael.
Amen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, ozer Yisrael b'gvura.
Amen. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, oter Yisrael b'tifara.
Amen.
Page 204 as we continue with the blessing for Torah study. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. We'll continue together at the top of page 205. We seekers of God, how do we find you? In good deeds and in the study of Torah. And your search for us, you find us in the bending of the knee, in the rigor of study, in the honesty of commerce, through a good heart, through decency, in respect, true fellowship, companionship, and love, through truth and peace, in the no that is really no, and the yes that is really yes. Baruch atah Adonai, hamelamed Torah le'amo Yisrael. Elu divarim she'en lehem shi'ur. These are things that are limitless, of which a person enjoys the fruit of the world while the principle remains in the world to come. They are honoring one's father and mother, engaging in deeds of compassion, arriving early for study morning and evening, dealing graciously with guests, visiting the sick, providing for the wedding couple, accompanying the dead for burial, being devoted in prayer, and making peace among people. But the study of Torah encompasses them all. Page 218 as we continue.
Hallelujah, 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 hallelujah.
hallelujah, 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 hallelujah.
Hallelujah, beteka shofar. Hallelujah, benevel bechinor. Hallelujah, betov machon. Hallelujah, bimini be'olam.
Hallelujah, 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 hallelujah.
Hallelujah, betzilzele shama. Hallelujah, betzilzele trua. From the shama to hallelujah.
Hallelujah, 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 hallelujah. Middle of page 223 as we continue. You shall always be praised, great and holy God, our sovereign in heaven and on earth. Songs of praise and psalms of adoration become you, acknowledging your might and your dominion. Yours are strength and sovereignty, sanctity, grandeur, and glory always. We offer our devotion, open our hearts in acclamation. Baruch atah Adonai, El Melech Gadol Batishbachot, El HaHodaot, Adon Haniflaot, Habocher B'Shirei Zimra, Melech El Chei Ha'olamim.
יתגדל ויתקדש מרבה.
Amen.
בעלמא יברך ירותי וימליך מלכותי.
B'chayechonu Yom Echad Uv'chayei Techol Beit Yisrael B'gala B'gala U'bizman Karib.
וימרו.
Amen. Yehi Shmei Rama Mevorach Le'olam Ol Me'amaya.
יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל שמי קדושה
B'richu
לעילא מכל ברכתה ושירתה
Tushbechata v'nechemata Damiran be'alma.
וימרו.
Amen. Page 228 as we rise for the Baruch Hu. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, yotzer or uvarei choshech, oseh shalom uvarei et hakol, hameir la'aretz v'ladarim aleha barachamim, uvtuvo mechadesh b'chol yom tamid ma'aseh v'reishit, ma rabu ma'asecha Adonai, Kulam b'chokhmah asita, malah haaretz kinyanecha. Titbarach Adonai Eloheinu, al shabach ma'aseh yadecha, ve'al merei or she'asita yifa'arucha sela, or chadash al tzion ta'ir, v'nizkehu lanu mehera le'oro. Baruch atah Adonai, Yotzer hamerot. Once or twice in a lifetime, a man or woman may choose a radical leaving, having heard Lech Lecha, go forth. God disturbs us toward our destiny by hard events and by freedom's now urgent voice, which explode and confirm who we are. We don't like leaving, but God loves becoming. Baruch atah Adonai, habocher be'amo Yisrael be'ahava. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Please be seated. Vishinantam levanecha, v'dibarta b'am, v'shivtecha b'beitecha, u'lechtecha b'derech, u'v'shokbecha u'v'umecha, u'kshartam leot al yadecha, v'hayu l'totafot b'neinecha, u'v'tavtam al mezuzot beitecha uvisharecha leman tizkeru vasitem et kol mitzvotai v'hitem kedoshim lelohechem ani Adonai Elohechem asher hoseti etchem me'eretz Mitzrayim Liot lachem Elohim, Ani Adonai Elohechem. The eternal truth is that you alone are God and there is none else. May the righteous of all nations rejoice in your love and exult in your justice. Let them beat their swords into plowshares and their spears into pruning hooks.
Let nation not without sword against nation. You're not a boy anymore.
Everybody, let's do this responsively. You shall not hate your brother or your sister in your heart.
The stranger that sojourns with you shall be accepted as your equal.
Why do you crush my people and oppress the poor, asks God.
We know that the eternal one protects the poor.
Praise to God Most High. rise for the Tefillah.
Adonai sefata tiftahu fi agi tehilatecha.
Adonai, open up my lips, that my mouth may declare your praise. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu, Elohei Avotenu v'Imotenu, Elohei Abraham, Elohei Yitzchak, Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, Elohei Leah, Ha'el HaGadol, HaGibor v'Hanora, El Elyon, Gomel Chasadim Tovim, Ve'koneh HaKol, Ve'zocher Chasdei Avot v'Imahot, U'mevii Geulah libnei bneihem, Leman Shemo be'ahava, Melech Ozer u'Moshiach u'Magen, Baruch atah Adonai, Magen Avraham ve'Ezrat Sarah, Atah Gibor ve'Ram Adonai, Mechayeh hakol atah, Rav leHoshia, Mashiv haruach u'morid haGashem, Mechalkel ha'im bechesed, Mechayeh hakol berachamim rabim, Somech noflim verofeh olim, Umatir asurim, Umekayem emunato, Lishenei afar, Michamocha bal geburot, Umidor melech, Melech memit umechayeh, Umatzmiach Yeshua, V'ne'eman atah l'chayot hakol, Baruch atah Adonai, Mekayeh hakol.
נקדש את שמך בעולם, כשם שמקדישים אותו בשמי ברוך, ככתוב על-יד נביאך, וקרא זה אל זה ואמר, קדוש קדוש קדוש, אדוני צבאות, מלוא הארץ כבודו. אדיר אדירנו אדוני, אדוננו מאדיר שמך בארץ.
Baruch kevod Adonai ממקומו.
אחד הוא אלוהינו, הוא אבינו מלכנו, הוא מושיענו וישמיענו, ברחמיו לעיני כל חי. אני אדוני אלוהים,
ימלוך אדוני לעולם, אלוהי ציון, לדור ודור. הללויה.
לדור ודור נגיד גודלך, ולנצח נצחים קדושתך נקדיש, ושבחך אלוהינו מפינו לא יחוש, לעולם ועד. ברוך אתה אדוני, האל הקדוש.
Page 250 as we continue and we are seated.
ישמחו במלכותך, שומרי 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 שבת וקורא הולך שבת. ישמחו במלכותך, שומרי 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 שבת וקורא הולך שבת. מקדשי שבי שבת, כולם יספרו ויתנו מטבח השבת. אוי ישמחו malchutecha, Shomerei, Shomerei, Shomerei Shabbat vekore, Oneg Shabbat, Yismechu v'malchutecha, Shomerei, Shomerei, Shomerei Shabbat vekore, Oneg Shabbat, V'hashvi'i Ratzita bo kidashta Shabbat, Hemdat Yamim, Oto karata Shabbat, Yismechu v'malchutecha, Shomerei, Shomerei, Shomerei Shabbat vekore, Oneg Shabbat, Yismechu v'malchutecha, Shomerei, Shomerei, Shomerei Shabbat vekore, Oneg Shabbat. Zecher L'maaseh Bereshit Shabbat, Zecher L'maaseh Bereshit Shabbat, Yismechu v'malchutecha, Shomerei, Shomerei, Shomerei Shabbat vekore, Oneg Shabbat, Yismechu v'malchutecha, Shomerei, Shomerei, Shomerei Shabbat vekore, Oneg Shabbat.
We offer thanks for the day, for the time, and for this Shabbat which unites us in faith and hope, for Shabbat holiness which inspires sacred living, for Shabbat memories glowing even in darkness, for Shabbat peace born of friendship and love. We offer thanks and blessing, O God. Baruch atah Adonai, Mekadesh HaShabbat. Ritzei Adonai Eloheinu, be'amcha Yisrael, utfilatam be'ahava tikabel, utihi l'ratzon tamid avodat Yisrael amecha. Baruch atah Adonai, she'otcha levadcha bira na'avod. For the expanding grandeur of creation, worlds known and unknown, galaxies beyond galaxies, filling us with awe and challenging our imaginations. For this fragile planet Earth, its times and tides, its sunsets and seasons. For the joy of human life, its wonders and surprises, its hopes and achievements. For human community, our common past and future hope, our oneness transcending all separation, our capacity to work for peace and justice in the midst of hostility and oppression. For high hopes and noble causes, for faith without fanaticism, for understanding of views not shared. For all who have labored and suffered for a fairer world, who have lived so that others might live in dignity and freedom. For human liberties and sacred rights, for opportunities to change and grow, to affirm and choose. We pray that we may live not by our fears, but by our hopes, not by our words, but by our deeds. Baruch atah Adonai, hatov shimcha u'lecha ne'eh lahodot.
Sim, 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 shalom, sim, 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 shalom, sim, 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 shalom, tova u'bracha. Ya la 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 ya la la, ya la 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 ya la la, ya la 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 ya la la, ya la la ya la la. Sim, 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 shalom, sim, 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 shalom, sim, 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 shalom, tova u'bracha. Ya la 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 ya la la, ya la 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 ya la la, ya la 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 ya la la, ya la la ya la.
Let's take a few moments, each of us, for some silence, some prayer, some meditation.
Iul razzonim refi, iul razzonim refi, meia lebile fanecha, Adonai tzuri vegoli. Ose shalom bimramav, uyase shalom aleinu, v'al kol Yisrael, veimeru, veimeru, amen.
Join me, please, on page 371 as we turn our hearts and our prayers toward those who are needing healing, who are needing wholeness, who are needing strength and courage. As we say, Mishaberach Avotenu v'Imotenu Avraham Yitzchak v'Yaakov, Sarah Rivka Rachel Baleah, Hu Yivarech et HaCholim. May the one who blessed our ancestors Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, Sarah, Rebecca, Rachel, and Leah, bless and heal those who are struggling, those who are ill. This morning we are thinking of James Boyle, Zachary Couch, Lori Conway, Barbara DeCario, Thomas DiMatteo, Bacha Leah Bat Etel, Mark Friedman, Elizabeth Friedman, Yeshaya Idel Ben Gittel, Dennis Goldsmith, Bonnie Hughes, Bobby Johnson, Ira Coleman, Abby Kohat, George Okrant, Moshe Sa'at, Karen Jacobson, Marty Jacobson, Dorothy Jacobson, Shana Esther Bat Ruchel, Meira Ruth Bat Avraham Vasara, Beth Shackman, Moshe Ben Leah, Florence Sporn, and Morty Weiner. If there are others whom you would add to this list or names better spoken aloud by you, please, as I look your way, would you show that name? May the Blessed Holy One be filled with compassion for their health to be restored and their strength to be revived. May God swiftly send them renewal of body and of spirit. And let us join together in saying,
Amen.
Amen. Mishabera avotenu mekor habracha v'imotenu. May the source of strength, who bless the ones before us, help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say, Amen. Mishebera imotenu mekor habracha navotenu. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shlema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say, Amen.
We turn from words of strength, words of healing, of hopefulness, of wellness, to words of Torah in which we find words of healing and health and hopefulness and strength and order and inspiration. We look now to Mishpatim. This is the section in which we find ourselves. Those of you receiving the email from Ellen know a little bit of background already, probably on Mishpatim. Those of you who have studied before also know where we are in Exodus. We are entering into some of the more nitty-gritty at this point. And I'm thankful that last week our 7th graders had the opportunity to, in a bit of a microcosm for those who were here, to hear how you stitch together and how you study and how you learn Torah on Saturday mornings, that their learning doesn't happen just in a vacuum, but that you added to what Shabbat is outside of this little slice that they have as they're anxious and preparing for their bar and bat mitzvah, that they can learn from you and to hear from you. And I hope that that will pique their interest after, hopefully during, but after they become bar and bat mitzvah as well, to come and to join us, as sometimes we have. We have a couple of students who come and worship with us and study with us. So we are at Parshat Mishpatim. The word itself means judgments. And in it, we know that there is a rabbinic interpretation from the Talmud. There's a distinction between mishpatim and chukim. You've maybe heard these words before. Mishpatim, we know, are the laws in the Torah which could be arrived at by human reason, and chukim are the laws which were beyond the grasp of human understanding, and so that we just were supposed to obey them because God said so. Not in the I'm your mother and I say so kind of way, but in the God way that says some of them they're for us to figure out, and some of them just do because I say you should do them. Maybe it's similar, I don't know. This section is also known as the Book of the Covenant, and it begins with a detailing of the laws and the ordinances we know from our study that Moses wrote down. So the scene opens with the people of Israel probably 10 weeks or so post leaving Egypt. They've gathered at the foot of Mount Sinai. We know because you put this all together for us last week and in the weeks that you've been studying. They've gathered at the foot of Mount Sinai. They've received revelation. They've received the Ten Commandments. And as our sages say, the people at the foot were freaked out. Right? That's I think what our sages say. They were freaked out. It was too much for them. It was too bold, too big. And they said to Moses, what did they say to Moses? You do this for us, right? You be our middle guy. You help us figure all this out. And Moses agrees and is their middle person. And the rules really are diverse. We're going to look at some of them. They cover virtually every aspect of human life. So we are going to look at one section. We're going to look at chapter 23, verses 12 and forward. So you will find that on page, I think it is 520, I think, yeah, right? Is it 520? Nope. 2312 is where we are. I thought I had it.
What page?
520. I think we all have some different filmashim, yeah. Thank you. 520 is where we'll pick up 23, verse 12. So we're tucked right into. It's a whole bunch of you should do this, you shouldn't do this, here's how we're going to do this, here's how we're going to do that kind of rules, but I thought we would focus on one specific area. So let's say our blessing, and then do we have somebody who would like to read that section in the English right after we get started? Thanks, Gail. Baruch Hu. ונתן לנו את תורתו, נותן התורה.
6 days shall you do your work, but on the seventh day you shall cease from labor, in order that your ox and your ox may rest, and that your homeborn slave and the stranger may be refreshed. Be on guard concerning all that I have told you. Make no mention of the names of other gods. They shall not be heard on your lips. 3 times a year you shall hold a festival for you. You shall observe the feast of unleavened bread, eating unleavened bread on 7 days, as I have commanded you, at the set time in the month of Abib. For in it you went forth from Egypt, and none shall appear before me empty-handed. And the feast of the harvest, of the first fruits of your work, of what you sow in the field, and the feast of ingathering at the end of the year, when you gather in the results of your work from the field. 3 times a year all your males shall appear before the sovereign, the eternal. You shall not offer the blood of my sacrifice with anything leavened, and the fat of my festival offering shall not be left lying until morning. The choice first fruits of your soil you shall bring to the house of the eternal your God. You shall not boil a kid in his mother's milk.
Okay, so we're going to stop there. What do you notice first off? What in that passage do you read? It maybe not the passage you thought we were going to look at today, right? What do you notice? What do you notice? What caught your attention first off?
Seventh day of rest.
Seventh day of rest, right? So what's noteworthy about that?
Well, you take an entire day off from the week. Your labors, not only your labors, it's the animals' labors, your ox's labors. And then the most interesting point I find in this parable is your homeborn slave.
Right. Can you hear in the back? Alan, can you hear? Okay, just speak a little bit louder.
Yeah, I'd like to know what homeborn slave means, because homeborn slave sounds like those are other Jews that do that.
Right? Go ahead, Alan. Speak loudly so everybody can hear. Right, like kind of, right, and we understand that as like indentured servitude, right? That people who were born into service, right?
They're just out of Egypt. They're out of Sinai. So while they were slaves, they had slaves of their own.
What's happening? What's happening right now?
Everyone needed a cleaning.
That's perhaps what some of our later sages said, right? Right. But that there was a culture of service, right? Of service, and certainly in Egypt there were that was our role. And then how did that carry? The question is, how did that carry forward? But let's go back to a second to the first point that you pointed to, which was Sabbath, right? Which was rest, which was a full stop. You started off by saying, Herb, not just for us, but also for our animals, right? For our animals. Who would think, right? This is where we talk about the laws of Leviticus, really distilled down so very finely to say that it's not just that you should kick back and relax and put your feet up, right? But that this should be a day where you make conscious choices to be a part of the stepping back from the creative process, right? Where what you do is your choice, but what you cause others to do by your choices or lack of choices also should be noticed. Yeah.
Cows have to be milked every day. How does that?
Right. So what happens to the cows that have to be milked every day? Otherwise, what? They're uncomfortable, right? It's not safe for them, right? So what happened? Who knows what happened? Right. So the thinking was that you relieved the cow enough of enough milk that the cow wouldn't be uncomfortable or in pain, but that you didn't milk the cow enough to be producing milk to be moving forward into commerce. Right. That you wouldn't milk your cow in order to sell the milk. Right. That wasn't the goal. That it might be enough milk just to relieve the cow and enough milk to just be able to have in the house for that day, but not for consumption by the public. Right. Yeah. But what else? Yeah, Gail.
I'm just thinking that this description of how to honor the Sabbath, that commandment, is also moving to be good stewards of the earth.
Right. Say it again louder.
That it gives more meaning to the commandment to be a steward of the earth.
Right. To be mindful of the earth and to giving the earth a chance to rest as well, right? Which we know we have teachings around as well, leaving a corner of your field unpicked, that we have a 7th year cycle, right, where we let the earth replenish itself, right? We give it a rest, right? That's the sabbatical year. That's what Rabbi Katz is enjoying right now. He is getting his sabbatical to rest, to replenish, to re-energize, to be able to produce best and better. What was that? And he's checking the vineyards. That's right. Yeah. What else are you noticing? Yeah, please, Frank.
That God is a bit of an egotist because he needs to be honored because he's the year of the best of the best.
Right. We were talking about it in Bible study this morning, right? That God is often a needy God, right? Especially in our Torah text, right? In Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy, that God has a lot of seeming insecurities, right? Praise me, honor me, follow me, only pick me, be careful to stay away from other people who aren't picking me, bring me your first fruits, bring me your first grain offerings, bring me the best of this, bring me the best of that, right? A very needy God. So what does that kind of set up for us in terms of our understanding of God and our relationship with God. How do you process that as contemporary Jew?
Well, it's a way of making, like, remember me is like saying that you have to do certain things to really stick around. Almost. In other words, if you don't remember me, I'm not going to stick around.
Right? And we saw that in Bible study too, right? It's we have signed on to this pact, and we have this covenant. We have our job in this, right? Right? God says, if you want me to, there's no bones about it. God says, if this is going to work, this is what I need. And that's a non-negotiable. Right? That's a non-negotiable.
Maybe God's saying He's above who we are.
Say it again.
Maybe God is telling us He's above who we are.
Maybe God is telling us that God's above who we are.
Right.
Hands down. Hands down, right? Yeah.
I find in this lots of contradictions. I mean, first of all, the Jewish slaves were freed, but there were other Jewish slaves. If you were a slave to another Jew, you were still a slave.
Right. And I want to just pause for 1 second, because our brain typically goes to our understanding of slavery in this country, right? And it's a very different servitude.
But they didn't say servant, they said
Right,
slave.
right,
Okay?
right.
They also,
It's the same Hebrew root.
okay,
It's the same, also the same Hebrew root of
Serving
you're
the
serving
slave.
God.
Right.
Avodah,
Right.
Eved.
Eved, right,
Avim.
right.
You're all the
Yeah.
same root.
this could be in the translation.
Right.
But then in the next.
Tell us which verse you're on.
Right. I've told you, make no mention of the names of other gods. They shall not be heard on your lips. But if God is the only God, why would he acknowledge other gods?
Why would God acknowledge other gods? What was going on? Where were they?
They don't exist.
What?
We were wondering that some people did worship other gods.
Say it again?
Some people did worship other gods.
It was the zeitgeist, right? It was the culture. That was what was happening. Right? There were other gods around them, and this was that same.
In the Jewish community.
Well, where were they just coming from?
Egypt.
Right? So they were privy to this, right? This is what they saw. This is what they were experiencing, and this is what we're reading in Jeremiah as well. That there are so many times that God says, "Stop being idolaters. Stop being idolaters. Don't pray to this God. Don't be worshiping any other foreign gods," because that's what they were surrounded by,
So
right?
not that today. Can we mention the names of gods that people believe?
Can we mention them?
Yes.
Can we mention them? Right? What's the prohibition?
No mention of the names of other gods that shall not be heard on your lips.
Right.
At least in your personal theology of whether you see other people having a God that they call a different name and it's all the same God.
Say that again.
I said that depends on your personal theology of do you personally believe that everyone worships, that who is a monotheist worships the same God but calls God by a different name, so that when we say Yalenu, we say, and in that day God's name will be one, God will be one, and God's name will be all the same for everybody. But we also know that coming out of Egypt weren't just Hebrews. There were other people with them in that multitude of people. So it wasn't like, we're all Jews here, why should we even have to think about the Egyptian gods? There were other people with them who were let out of prison, traveling with them. They were.
And this wasn't a confident people yet, right? This wasn't a faithful people yet, because imagine what we've talked about this before, imagine what it must have been like for them to be coming out of Egypt, and without getting too deep into their psychology, what they must have been thinking and feeling and wondering about and doubting, even though they had been taken out of Egypt, right? That they weren't, in all likelihood, completely sure of how this was going to go, and so there was doubt, right? And it's through our doubt that we build our faith, right? Not in certainty, but through our doubt, right? And these are these moments, right? What else are you taking from the text? What else do you notice?
We're not 19 yet.
No, we're not at 19 yet. What else do you notice? Say again? Does your text say that? You have a different translation, right? Yeah. So, right. So Liz just said, "Don't eat cheeseburgers," right? So it gives us some of our framework for how we ought to eat, right? And what's the thinking behind that? That's 19, right? That's the you shall not boil a kid in its mother's milk, right? How is that understood? Well, why not?
You don't need
Right? That's how we.
That's how we interpret it. But why
Yeah.
is this in a section of Mishpatim and not in Chukim?
That's-
Because all of the other rules of kashrut are considered Chukim, and this is a civil law,
Right.
not a part of, I said so, and you don't have to understand it. So there's, by the definition of Mishpatim, there's got to be logic to this, and it's just 6 words and we're done with it.
And what, those 6 words shape kashrut for us, right?
I mean, I think it's there because
You have to just speak louder.
I'm sorry. I think it's there because it is a logical. In other words, care for what you're doing to this mother. Don't just, disregard it.
Right. It's the mother-child relationship, right? The humaneness, is that the right word? The steering away from what would be seen as cruel to boil a kid in its mother's milk, right? For the mother, right? And then around that becomes our whole basis for kashrut, right? For the separation of meat and milk, and how far that's gone. Not just from don't have a cheeseburger, but we have taken it so far to even mean don't have a veggie burger with cheese, because it might look like a cheeseburger to someone who keeps kosher, and then what do we do? And that's called ma'arat ayin, right? What are we responsible for? How did we get from verse 19 that says don't boil a kid in its mother's milk to don't have a boca burger with cheese? Right? But you jumped over, this was the one that caught my attention, you jumped over verse 17.
Yes, that's what I was going to mention.
Yeah, go ahead. What do you notice in there?
Well, first of all, I honestly don't know what that refers to. And secondly, the distinction of males as opposed to
Right? Right, so what is it? Why are men singled out here to come 3 times a year to appear before God? What does it mean? Right? How come it's only the men? How come it's just the men who are required to come? Yeah?
I think because we're voted women because we're in childbearing so frequently, that when a woman is childbearing and the odds of a woman living in those days, having a baby was very hazardous.
Right.
And therefore they can't travel necessarily as easily, or they may have just given birth, or whatever. I think childbirth.
So in fact, just the way 19 is the proof text for kashrut, verse 17 becomes the proof text for how we separate out the mitzvot, the commandments, the time-bound and the non-time-bound requirements for men and women, and that women are in fact exempt from any time-bound commandments. So give me a time-bound commandment that you can think of. Praying 3 times a day, right? Women technically don't have to observe, right? Praying 3 times a day, they're exempt from it. Are they allowed to? Yes.
I
Yeah.
was just going to say, in some interpretations, that's come to mean they are not permitted.
Right. So how do we,
It doesn't say that.
kind of like the boca burger with cheese, right? It doesn't say that women can't pray 3 times a day or do any of the what are called time-bound mitzvot, the ones that require, that you have to pray by a certain time, that you have to, most of them are around prayer, around tefillin, or around saying the Shema, or around different things that you would have to do at a certain time, observing certain festivals, right? We are all commanded to observe certain festivals, but the things that have a certain time stamp on them, women are removed from having to do that. But how did we get from not being required to do that to not being permitted in some circles to do that? Yeah. Is this the first time that Passover is established?
It's hard to tell because whoever redacted the Torah, Passover is also established in another portion that comes in a few weeks and more.
Right.
But we don't know if it was redacted in from someplace else. laws.
Right.
Rather than.
Right. In critical biblical analysis, how the text was stitched together is the one answer. Is this the first time in the text? I think it might be. Yeah, I think,
The
yeah.
fact that they just
Yeah.
actually had the first Passover.
Yeah, they've just come out of Egypt. I'm just trying to think if there are any other references. I don't think so. It wouldn't make sense for there to be, but if you look at that biblical analysis and who put together what text when, some people say it's a retrospective, right? So yeah. Anything else at all that you? Yeah, Gail. We're not going to skip over it, yeah.
I just would like to say, that we are here in a Reformed congregation, and when that question is asked, how did we get to
Yeah.
this to the burgers, or this to the veggie burgers, or this to the not being permitted, I think we have to claim that it is power, and the power through the generations has been a form of patriarchy, and that we have to stay mindful of this because this is what is happening here in our country and around the world. And it's equally detrimental to men as it is to women.
And in fact, we talked about that in Jeremiah this morning. There's always crossover. We talked about what those systems, what they were meant to do. They were meant to give structure to a people who weren't yet formed in community to figure out what rules they needed, what laws they needed, what regulations, what kind of customs they needed, and what things needed to be non-negotiable, and which things were up for discussion. And as is so often the case, two things. One, the pendulum swung very far right to be very, as we understand it, very restrictive, but we understand it looking back at it, and also to keep a certain group, in this case men, patriarchy, very much and very solidly in place to the exclusion of women. Now, were women observing? Probably. Do we know that? No. Why don't we know that? Because who redacted and who wrote this book, right? Different conversation for another time. Herb and then Ellen.
Oh, no, I was going to go to the show now.
Okay, hold on one second. Did you have something before that? Yeah.
To tandem on that, and it just kind of popped into my mind that it was also, if you put on your ancient glasses, that women, if a woman came to serve God and bring a sacrifice, chances are women didn't have ownership of those animals. Those animals
Right.
didn't belong to the women.
Right.
But at the bottom of Mount Sinai, women brought their
Gold, right.
but that's about all they had. They didn't, on behalf of their family, own.
It was an institutionalized kind of system that grew and grew and grew and became much more bent on keeping that patriarchy in place, right?
Even when I was little, when my father sent a check for tzedakah, my mother wouldn't have ever thought that was anything but family money.
Right.
But my father wrote the check.
Right.
On the other hand, she gave him the allowance.
Different bit of Torah for us, yeah, Herb.
And the same thing, could this happen? Could this possibly have to do with the fact that women are unclean at all times?
Right. So, do we even have the laws of nida yet? Not yet. Right. We have the sense of, and even that grew. Kind of we talked about that this morning too, actually. Right. The laws of what a woman could or couldn't do based on, and it's all tied back to childbirth, based on menstruation, right, and what made her pure enough to make an offering. Because there was a sense that when you were menstruating, or right after you had had a child, that the blood that was still coming from you rendered you impure and a threat to the holiness of the temple, right? And the offerings that you would make into the temple. Also, when we go far enough back into that argument, what is it about that blood that makes a woman impure? Because somebody said that she was impure. Not that how come if you cut your finger as a man, you're not impure?
If you take the patriarchal view of it, women are pretty powerful in that they give money.
Right.
And so if you make stuff around giving money bad,
Right.
then you...
Right. You enforce the patriarchy. Right. We are agreed. Okay, last thought. You wanted to share something about 19?
You shall not offer blood again. Of my sacrifice with anything that I even the fat of my fist, as an offering shall not be one of mine and from one. So here we're told that blood can't be used.
Right.
I mean, we can't enjoy now blood cooking.
Right.
And when we kosher meat, we have to take it.
Right.
Okay? And my question is why? And secondly, when we talk about the Fatima Festival offering, so not be left lying until morning, what does that mean?
Right. So what does it mean? What does it mean? Right. So two things. We'll start with the blood piece, right? It goes back to blood is not something that we should consume, right? Now, also there was talk about whether or not there was cannibalism going on during that time, and whether or not that was a prohibition to stay very far from any kind of cannibalism or any other ritual that was taking place during that same time period. That's one, and that we know, as you said, that we are very strict about blood in, right? If there's a speck of blood in an egg, it's rendered unkosher. We don't even need to go to koshering meat, but a speck of blood in an egg, it's gone, and the whole dish that you were making, if it was touched by it, is gone. But in terms of the offering and that which is left on the altar, right? After you've made your offering to God, and then you partake in what's left from the offering, why does God say, don't wait till the next morning? Right. A, it's going to spoil. B, it's a needy God. Do it now, right? Do it now. This is an offering. It's time sensitive, right? It's time bound. There's a certain framework in which the remnants of the offering that went to the people should be eaten or enjoyed, whatever the offering was, right?
Should be fresh.
Should be fresh. Otherwise, it'll spoil, right? It was also
Count towards your next day's offering.
Right.
That if you have your Shabbat offering and you're finishing it on a different
Right.
day, you shouldn't be able to think that, oh, I have leftovers from this offering.
All right.
It'll count for tomorrow.
I'm so trying not to go to the whole point system right now, right? And knowing which offering bit is good for this day and not the other day.
I think the blood, saying that you should walk with blood is almost the same as you should not boil a kid in his mother's milk. Because blood is life source. So it's the same relationship as the next one.
Right.
With boiling a kid in his mother's milk.
Right.
It's like you're eating the life source
Right.
of an animal or a person.
Right.
The dash the blood all over the offering.
Right. We have a whole bunch. Right. It was right. Like just before your what's going to be, I'm sure, a lovely lunch. I don't want to get into what the altar probably looked like, or how we understood blood in those times, or offering up sacrifice. But yeah, it wasn't a clean business for sure, and it was quite a business, right? The whole sacrificial cult was quite a business, how that all worked. But how we understand that, and how we understand there are tomes and tomes and tomes written about blood in the Bible. I would encourage you, if you are blood and also water in the Bible, to look closely and to see what our sages and our scholars had to say about it. Someone had a last. Yeah, Jackie.
If blood is the life force,
Yeah.
then why are there so many prohibitions against it? It would seem that we're leaving.
Well, right, and we are commanded best we can to donate blood, right? Right. So it's layers upon layers upon layers of what and who deemed blood to be a good thing or a bad thing, right?
One more.
Yeah. This is my favorite. No, keep going. Yeah.
Because, you live in a Jewish household, there was schmaltz on the table.
We're not in Jewish households yet. We're at the foot.
Don't eat fat until the next day.
Yeah.
We can't do blood, we can't do
Yeah.
Well, we can do fat the next day.
Yeah. Okay, then on that happy note, we continue on. Let's say our blessing.
Hashem natan lanu et torato.
Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah. So thankful for this village, aren't we? This week, last week, every week. Let's turn to page 586 as we continue with our closing blessings with the Aleinu. Page 586. Please, we ask you to rise.
Aleinu l'shabech la'adon ha'kol, לתת גדולה ליוצא בראשית, שלא עשה לגבי הארצות, ולא שמרנו ממשפחות האדמה, שלא שם חלקנו בהם, וגורלנו גר רחמנה.
pause now to think of our loved ones whom death has recently taken from us, those who have died in this season, at this season in years past, and those whom we have drawn into our hearts with our own. This Shabbat marks a yahrzeit and anniversary of passing for Bella Alpert, Harriet August, Shirley Berger, Max Burns, Vivian Bolio, Eston Cohen, Mark Cohn, Henry Cook, Ed Dosher, Jerome Fain, Steve Fishbane, Charles Flowers, Sandy Fogarty, Jacob Friedlander, Evelyn Frischman, Jack Frischman, Edward Goldberg, Wallace Griffith, Joan Hyman, Sadie Kaiser, Bernadine Cooker, Hilda Lazier, Sarah Lewis, Marion Loeb, Willis Pierce, William Pine, Janice Richmond, Harvey Rosenblum, Berkeley Roth, Rose Rubel, Vincent Sangenario, Murray Schmutter, Jacob Schuster, Esther M. Schwartz, Raymond Schwartz, Nachum Shillman, Mirit Skirker, Joel Smetana, Charles Soloway, Adela Weissman, Carola Wachdel, Avis Waddell, and Sarah Zuckerman. If there are names that you would add for us to be remembering, or names better spoken aloud by you, please, as I look your way, would you share that name with us? We join together on page 598. Yitkadal v'yitkadash shmei Rabbah, be'alma divrach irutei v'yamlich malchutei, b'chayechon u'vyomechon u'v'chayei dechol beit Yisrael, ba'agala v'zman kariv v'imru amen. Yehei shmei Rabbah mevarach le'olam olmei almaya, yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitramam v'yitnaseh, v'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal shmei d'kudusha b'richu. Le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechamata, da'amiran be'alma v'imru amen. Yehei shlama Rabbah min shemaya, v'chaim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Oseh shalom b'mromav, hu ya'aseh shalom, aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael, ve'al kol yoshvei tevel, v'imru amen. May the one who creates harmony on high bring peace to us, to all who are mourning, to all Israel, as we join together in saying,
Amen.
And please be seated. Just a few quick announcements. Winterfest is this afternoon, and we are lucky that we have some sun and some warm-up, so we hope to see you there if you had registered for it, or if you can still make it. We want to remind you also that tomorrow morning we have adult education and we have regular school as well. Cantor Braun will be teaching adult education tomorrow morning, and we have Hebrew class as well, and the men's club Super Bowl party at 5:30 tomorrow, and rain volunteer training on February 5th at 6:30 at New Hope Free Methodist Church. And Purim practice tomorrow morning
10:30.
at 10:30. That's right. And last night we had a wonderful turnout. Some of you were here for the Jewish Disabilities and Inclusion Month. So last night we had speakers come in from Brockport talking about visual impairment and blindness, and very, very compelling. Next week we hope to have Lynn Fisher joining us, who's the Community Education and Outreach and Training Coordinator for NAMI, for the National Alliance on Mental Illness. So she'll be speaking about mental health next week at the 8 o'clock service. And if you haven't yet signed up for the consultation on conscience through the RAC, the Religious Action Center, I think there's still time to do that. You can do that online as well. Any other announcements, any other joys or successes or news that we should know about? Yeah, the collection, please, for there you can collect. You can bring in hats and mitts and scarves and jackets. There are some receptacles around the building. We're appreciating this warm-up. Not everybody is appreciating it the same way that we're able to. So if you have either gently used or new that you can contribute, we certainly would appreciate that. Any other announcements at all? Thanks. Who made lunch today? Ellen, thank you, as always, thank you. And thanks to all of you for not only for being here, but for being here in spirit as so many have their hands and hearts and heads put into making this Saturday morning Hamish and warm and meaningful and lovely. So thank you for being here. Just after we do Kiddush, our closing song will be
Озі зібрати я, page 647.
647. Let's rise for Kiddush, and then we'll finish with our closing song.
Baruch Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, borei beri ha'adam.
Amen. Amen. L'chaim. Please be seated, page 647.
Bottom of the page.
Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom.
Hello.
I want to thank all three of you, all four of you for coming. I had some Kaddish today, and there was only like 12 people. I thank everybody that came today, except me.
But Ross sold his business yesterday.
So now
They drank for $400 champagne. No. And he's going to tell the company that, the holding company that bought the company, he's taking 6 weeks off starting in March because he's having open heart surgery.
what? Why?
Because he has a foreign. So what are you supposed to do about
It's working. The heat. Yeah, it's working. So we should be all right.
Perfect.
Huh?
Good job, thanks.
Yeah, yeah, I mean, that would be the tall one, that would be the tall one, so, if you can find, you can see it at all, and then I can take it back, next to you, on tax. Yeah, I'm happy to.
Okay.
Okay?
Yeah, yeah. Oh, yeah. It's for presentation.
Yeah. Yeah, happy to. Monday, I'm not on Tuesday, so Monday, Wednesday, Thursday. If you need my message Mondays. If you send it to me soon, then I can,
Okay.
then I can try. Thank you.
You really can.
17.
Okay.
Remember the work done. I'll see you before that.
Okay. Bye, Gigi.
Bye.
Take good care.
You too. How you been?
I've been well, thank you.
Great. Staying warm.
I am, I'm gonna pick up my daughter today, next.
Did she have her, how was it? I sure do. TJ, next week, no, Jan's here, but after that, I'm fine. I don't need that big bench. You can bring me also just a chair. You don't just, I'm fine with the brown chair too, then you don't have to turn all that around. We can just work, but if that's easier, I'm quite happy with the brown chair.
Brown shirt up.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just as easy, and then you don't have to haul that around.
This is a rep I can't.
So some of these aren't the professionals, are they? Oh, she was still in. Thank you.
Oh, look at that. Oh, so nice. Was an amazing day. That's been.
It was, you know,
Come
it
here.
was crazy.
It was a pleasure.
It was a thing about two professional people there to same thing. You know, Susanna, just really giving it back to her, and she did as she walked down and just did it through mine. But, it was, she was so humble, and she just. It was just a beautiful thing.
It doesn't mean it's just like that.
Yeah.
When you see them in their natural habitat, maybe their work habitat, you think, right? Like, yeah. Oh, I'm so glad. Oh, yay.
Thank you.
Hank's okay?
He's good, yeah.
Yeah, my mom and dad are coming in. My dad's gonna come too. Yeah. Try not to. Oh, no, she's not like that. She's been my husband black, but I've been opposite for many years. Way natural. Okay, like that, so she's like, that's my house is, she's not like that. You know, I just like all the things I want to have in place for them. Yeah.